So at Baldwin Wallace University near Cleveland, Tim directs the Digital Marketing Center and is an assistant professor. Off campus, he is a digital marketing consultant with 20 years of experience across industries, including CPG, healthcare, and education. He is presented to professional associations and has developed and led training programs for individual businesses, nonprofit think tanks, municipalities, and economic development consortia. So thank you so much for being on here with us today, Tim. He's going to be talking to us about launching a fee-for-service campus consultancy. That's something I'm not familiar with as a student, so it'll definitely be fun to learn more about that.
Well, thank you, Abigail. And you had to mention the 20 years, right? You had to age me right then and there. Also, looking at the screen, I totally need a new headshot, it seems. So thank you for the opportunity, Stu Kent team. This has been a great ProfCon, always is. And thanks to each of you for joining me this afternoon. It's lunchtime here in the eastern half of the United States, so it's challenging to be the lunch speaker typically, but I really appreciate that you are here. You know, as I was telling Abigail, I could talk about these things all day long and would love to keep the conversation going. I am going to repost this link. Oh, right, it's a lunch and learn. I'm going to share this link again later on in the program today, but go ahead and screenshot it. We'll also put it out there on Twitter. Want to connect with you. If you're interested in developing a community of student talent, then I would like to hear from you. Would like to have the opportunity to network with you, learn about best practices with you, and troubleshoot some challenges that you might be having on your campus. All right, so I think one way to cover the outcomes that I hope to review in this 45 minutes that I have with you is to look at some alternative titles, some other names that we could have used for this session. You know, don't worry, ProfCon team, I'm going to stick to the script. I'm going to cover the same topic. But if we had to make some edits, I wanted to touch on some of the frequently asked questions that I get from faculty members who are interested in launching a fee-for-service campus consultancy. So think a student-run agency evolved into a student-powered agency that also has some staff support and is a revenue generator for the institution. So many of us work with clients in our classes, and I think that that's pretty important in the digital marketing world. It's such an applied area. I run our consultancy, but I also leverage class projects with outside businesses, particularly in my upper level content marketing coursework. But there is a difference between working with that class client and working with somebody who has a contract with you, who has you have contractual obligations to meet. A little bit different of a relationship. Also something in a class project scenario, a student could create some content, do some work, produce an artifact, and it checks all the boxes. You give it an A, but the client still sends it back. Client doesn't like it. Can't describe why, but it just isn't something that the client wants. They're looking for something else. I love it when clients throw curveballs. That's part of the real world learning in these types of experiential learning programs. So start out with your experience working with a class project and evolve it to this contractual, results-driven relationship. It is a different type of relationship to have with students who you teach in your courses or advise if they are part of your major or your school, and it's different to supervise them. I've spoken with faculty who this was a challenge for them. They weren't sure how to reprimand a student if needed. They were a little leery about having that change in dynamic, but I see it as a really awesome and interesting different way to engage with student talent outside of working with them in the classroom. But I code switch. It is a different persona. There's classroom, there's Professor Tim, and then there is director of the program Tim, where I'm working with my employees, not my students. So that change and shift is something that you'll experience as you grow and nurture a program on your campus. Okay. ProfCon, this should be a support group. We faculty, we are some of the busiest people on the planet. So how do we fit one more thing into prepping, lecturing, grading, mentoring, advising? If you're researching or publishing, you have your service commitments. Oh my gosh, we have very long to-do lists. So how do we make it work for us? How do we juggle being a practitioner and being a professor? So these three alternative titles, those are the themes that we're going to look at in this session today. All right, a little bit about me and why I proposed this topic for ProfCon. I'm a Practitioner-Track faculty member at my institution, Baldwin-Wallace University. And that means that I'm here for this. This is my whole reason for existing, is to launch and develop these types of programs and to nurture student talent and to develop the talent that power these programs. I'm a professional digital marketing consultant. I've been working in marketing communications for about 20 years, focused in digital since about 2009, 2010, have worked brand side, and then have also worked as a full-time consultant, my own solo practice and with a consulting network. And I still maintain my consulting practice and am encouraged to as part of the Practitioner-Track faculty position. So I'm tenure track, but have a slightly different role than the typical tenure stream faculty member. I do have an academic rank. I'm an assistant professor. I help develop the digital marketing major at our program. I teach classes mainly in that major, but also for marketing and in the public relations program as well. I teach primarily at the undergrad level, but developed a course and a graduate certificate in strategic marketing, where I teach a digital marketing management course. On our campus, we don't have a professional advising office, about 3,000 undergrads. So faculty serve as academic advisors and career mentors. So I'm regularly meeting one-on-one with students to troubleshoot something that they're experiencing at their internship, to give them some career guidance in addition to helping them complete their academic program. And then finally, the last piece, I'm giving release time in order to direct this program. So I teach fewer classes than a faculty member who's on that traditional tenure stream. The through line throughout this entire presentation is really this. If you're interested in developing a revenue generator for your campus, what works at your university is what will work at your university. You need to tap into systems and programs and initiatives that speak to what you're doing. You want to leverage any existing structures on your campus. BW, we're just outside of Cleveland. Maybe some of you will fly into Cleveland in the fall for Content Marketing World. If so, the Cleveland Airport is just steps from our campus. We're known for our service focus. We have several programs across the institution that connect students to the broader Northeast Ohio community. We also have a requirement at the undergraduate level called EXP, for Experiential Learning Requirements. So this goes outside of internships for students in business and other majors, outside of student teaching, outside of clinical hours for some of the healthcare majors, that every student on campus needs to get involved with the community in some way. So that's how I'm able to grow this program. If it wasn't me, if the program wasn't called what it's called, it would still exist because that's our focus. So we're a smaller regional comprehensive university, private institution, but I tap into that focus on service. One, as I advocate for resources on our campus, but two, that's part of our admissions marketing. So I want to attract students that want to roll up their sleeves and work hands-on. Our program has been very well received by university administration. We've had some great ambassadorship on the part of leadership across campus, and university relations and our admissions team have worked our program into some of the marketing initiatives for our university. Our market goes from about Buffalo, Rochester, New York, all the way to the eastern suburbs of Chicago, most of Ohio, northern Indiana, and southern Michigan. So it was great to have our program be recognized as a reason why students could transfer to our university or start at our university. Now, we started as the digital marketing clinic, but we are experiencing a change and evolution. And I wish ProfCon would have cleared the dates of this conference with me so I could do a walkthrough of our new digital presence that will reflect our new name, the Digital Marketing Center, where our student-powered consultancy is still a major part of, but we'll be launching some other initiatives too. To help you understand where I'm coming from on our campus, we have several other professional practice programs. And professional practice is the designation we give to any program that involves paying students to work with outside entities and is somehow attached to an academic program. Now, my student employees do not receive course credit for being part of this consulting work. Digital marketing majors on our campus need to have an internship, but I don't let them use our consultancy for that. I mandate that they work with an external employer. One of the professional practice programs on our campus focuses on voice of the customer research. That's our Center for Innovation and Growth, has its own building, has a staff and some other considerations. Another program that exists on our campus, very successful, graphic design studio. We're a smaller campus, so I have students involved in my program as well as these others. They're all related to marketing and communications. And there are professional practice programs in other areas of the university. There's a cybersecurity program through computer science. There's a community research polling institute through political science and social sciences. And here's my program, the Digital Marketing Center, our fee-for-service digital marketing agency or consultancy, represented by one of my recent grads, Brandon, who is developing and leading a training session for our client. What I want to do is talk about each of these models, how they operate, just to show you what some possibilities could be for your institution. Maybe something will resonate with you. Right, so we'll start at first with the voice of the customer research consulting group. Not my program, but these are my pals. We collaborate quite a bit. This program is funded through major gifts and grants. So out of the 3 revenue generators that I showed on the previous screen, this does bring in the most income to the university. We're talking about major corporate gifts from large businesses, representative of the Fortune 500 companies that have a presence in our region, to other mid-size firms, and also donors and private foundations through grants. This particular group is led by a staff position, an executive director. And in terms of overhead, there are multiple staff members that report to that executive director. There are a couple of program managers, there's an events person, an administrative person, and a stream of about a dozen interns who work full-time, 40 hours a week in the summer, and then different degrees of part-time during the academic year for 1 to 2 academic years. The operation also has a separate building that it maintains, and this building is in a more publicly accessible part of campus. So it also serves as an event venue for initiatives on campus, as well as a space rental from off-campus individuals as well. So that's one model. We'll look at the graphic design studio. Again, not my program, but my pals. This operation is funded strictly through client fees. The fee schedule for this studio is published. So X number of dollars for a poster, X number of dollars for a logo. The voice of the customer research consulting group does not have a published fee schedule like most consultancies. This model is led by an adjunct faculty member, a professor who's great at engaging students, who brings a tremendous amount of real-world experience to the role. And in terms of overhead, there's not a physical space for this design studio. And the student employees who work with this group already have all of the programs that the Adobe Creative Cloud essentially already need to subscribe to that to take the courses in their major. So those costs are covered. Now, the students are paid from those client fees, and that means that the studio will expand and contract in terms of headcount based on the number of active projects, right? So if there are 8 client projects on deck right now, then 8 students are employed. If there's 20 projects, then 20 students will be employed. This is a model that could work for you and your campus as well. Okay, now let's talk about the fee-for-service consultancy that I run in my role at the university, focused on digital marketing. You'll see that we're a combination of those other two models, the high overhead, the very low overhead. Our funding comes primarily from client fees, but also through grants and strategic partnerships. So I either have grants that directly provide funding to the program or partnerships with external players who might reimburse businesses for leveraging our services. The program is led by me. I'm in that role, and again, serve as a Practitioner-Track faculty member. I'm giving release time to direct the program, and that's a form of compensation. Our overhead, we're fortunate enough to have a great building exclusive to the School of Business where I am housed, although our program is open to students of all majors. We're completely transdisciplinary, but we have some great spaces, conference rooms that range from the traditional wood paneling to more modern spaces with modular furniture and multiple assets around technology. Also have a great digital marketing classroom. I do have a workspace next to my office where I've set up an Apple workstation. We have a mobile podcast recording area in there, and then also equipment and backdrops for one of our other service lines, an e-commerce studio. But really, we're just leveraging space that is part of the school. The students are primarily paid from client fees or through different grant initiatives. And here's my goal. I try to keep between 25 and 30 student employees on deck every semester, but that's also determined by active projects. So the Voice of the Customer Research, that institute on campus generally has about a dozen interns on campus. The graphic design studio expands and contracts around the number of projects that are active, the number of paying clients at the time. I have a goal to have this many employees on campus, and that determines the types of projects that I go after through business development initiatives, and the types of opportunities I might spend some time writing and submitting grants for. So here's my value prop to the university, that every semester, 20 to 30 students are going to get paid hands-on learning opportunities, primarily with external clients at no cost to the university. So we cover our costs. Now, I am able to do this through my Practitioner-Track line. I do not have to cover my own salary. In the model with the Voice of Customer Research, that overhead does have to, the money has to be raised to cover those staff positions. So I'm not in that position. I just don't have a budget to spend. So we have to cover our costs. But let's break this down and take a look at what I'm really saying here with this value prop. There's a lot of promotional value in having this program on campus. So I like to partner with admissions, career services, and also alumni relations and philanthropy. It's great that this program exists and can be messaged in different ways to those various audiences. Now, we're a smaller campus, so to have 20 to 30 students involved in anything is pretty big. It's great. We're big fish in a small pond. Now, I've talked to professors who were aiming to have about 10 to 12 interns. That's great. Message it as this program, this exciting opportunity for the top 10 students on campus, in your school or in your department. We want to be competitive, and I always aim to achieve what's called the resume mic drop. My goal is for when a student who was in our program applies for a job, when that hiring manager sees that they were employed by the Digital Marketing Center, the job search is over. So our mission is really to help students stand out in the job market by helping businesses stand out in the marketplace. So we want students to be competitive, but I hire students who already have prior internship experience. So the paid piece needs to be competitive. Students need to earn a salary, earn a wage from my program in line with what they would if they were working with a multinational in town. Every university is always looking at ways to improve its community relationships. So the fact that I focus on external clients is key to that town and gown conversation that every university is having, whether you're an urban campus, whether you're out in the burbs, whether you're in a more rural area. And the zero cost to the university, that's just the icing on the cake, right? That I'm able to, promise those first 3 bullet points and not incur any costs covering those costs. What we do with the budget surplus is reinvest in the program to create more opportunities for students. So we're going to focus on how I make these things happen on our campus, and we'll point to some of the other models that you might be able to employ on your campus as well. All right, so we have a question from Betsy in the chat about having a situation where student work wasn't up to par or team members weren't pulling their weight. Students have to apply to be in my program. That includes demonstrating a portfolio of work, having professional references. So we do screen students who are part of the project. Fortunately, I've been a manager. I've supervised staff before. I've hired subcontractors. I've hired team members. I've been brought in to manage RFP bidding processes. So I've developed some skills around managing people. One important role that you will play in a program like this is mentoring students as their supervisor. So no work is shown to the client in our program unless it's reviewed by the student supervisor, and we'll talk about that in a second. And it has to be reviewed and approved by myself as well. And I see if the work has to go back to the student specialist who produced that content, who produced that work. It's a good learning opportunity. And we need to go into this knowing that students will need to be coached. That's why I prefer the term student-powered consultancy as opposed to student-led agency. You're really creating an opportunity. You're really managing this program that ultimately benefits students. When students aren't pulling their weight on a project, you do what any supervisor would. You meet with them, you try to figure out what the cause of that problem might be, similar to what you would do with a student in one of your classes who might be struggling. And you create opportunities for that student to succeed. Maybe they're in the wrong role. Maybe they need some more coaching. Maybe there's something going on outside of campus that's affecting how much time they have to dedicate to the project. So you always investigate and then coach as needed. Had a student once that was really in the wrong role and switched them to a different set of tasks on the project and really soared and took off. So you want to really wear that mentor and coach role when you're working with students. And Betsy, I'll address the client piece later on, but thank you for asking those questions. All right, let's talk about your offerings. What does your consultancy do? Well, here are some of our core fee-for-service offerings. And I stress that because as we evolve from a clinic to a center, what will keep me busiest this next academic year will be non-revenue generating programs and professional development trainings that we'll offer. Our first and one of our services that we're known for is something I call a consulting project, and that involves a team of students. So we'll have an external client that will have a team of 3 to 5 undergraduates that serve as their digital marketing agency for either a full semester or on an ongoing basis. We have had clients that have retained us for multiple calendar years. We do work over break. We do work in the summer. And we have had clients that have worked with us for just 1 or 2 semesters. Another service we offer is something I call a consulting internship. A lot of businesses want to have an intern, but they might not have the bandwidth to supervise that person. So they not only outsource the digital marketing tasks to the student, but they outsource the supervision of their interns to me, to our program. So I handle everything from the payroll and the day-to-day operations and admin of having that intern, but I'm also the person who troubleshoots challenges, problems, and trains them. I wanted to have a service offering that helped us tap into larger clients that may already have marketing professionals on staff. A lot of marketing professionals are so focused and knee deep in their to-do list today, everything that they have to get through What they don't often have time to do, however, is take a step back and really examine what rivals and idols in the marketplace might be doing. So this is a service line. We'll develop a standardized instrument, work with an agreed upon number of organizations, and we'll apply an audit instrument to direct competition or aspirant organizations, looking at their digital marketing presence to identify and establish a baseline for our client to look for best practices and opportunities within that particular space. In one of our newer services, we have a mobile e-commerce studio that will use replica surfaces to create everything from a basic white box photograph or video of a product, but we'll also do the SEO component, the product-led SEO, to make sure that product pages of an online store are showing up where they should be as well. A lot of times when I talk about the services we offer, we're able to grow and be that broad because of the nature of my position, going back to that release time. A lot of agencies describe themselves as full service. So there can be assumptions that if you want a fee-for-service consultancy, you have to be full service, even though full service means different things to different people. But that's not the case. Fee-for-service does not have to mean that you're all things to all people. You get to control that, right? So would you launch a social media practice? And if so, are you going to focus on organic social or paid social or combination of both? Are there certain social media platforms you won't work with, or are you open to working with any number of platforms? What about search engine optimization or search engine marketing, or even helping new brick and mortars launch their Google My Business presence? So as we look at all of these icons on screen, there are a number of different service line possibilities that you could follow. Now, are you going to create a free account on MailChimp for a client that wants an email newsletter? If so, are you going to develop the template, the wireframe, the template, and produce a year's worth of content? We do that for clients. Or are you going to use something sophisticated and set up some pretty interesting and dynamic workflows in Salesforce or premium HubSpot account? Those are service options too. Do you build websites? Do you update existing websites? Do you develop content for websites? So we see a lot of options on screen, and you can really take a cafeteria approach and pick and choose which services speak to your consultancy and what you think would be best for you and for your students. Now, this screen is really heavily focused on tactics, but strategy is something important to consider too. Do clients need that overarching digital marketing strategy that's mapped to their growth goals? And if so, is that a separate service that you offer? Our consulting team projects will develop the digital marketing strategy mapped to the larger goals and then create the content or the accounts in order to implement that strategy and then transition that role in-house if it's a limited term engagement or if it's going to be ongoing. There are fee-for-service consultancies that just focus on the strategic piece. Here's your plan. Here's what you should be doing. It's on you to operationalize it. All of these are valid choices. They just speak to how much time you have and what opportunities you can tap into. Another question to ask, would your consultancy provide long-term support for a client? And if so, will you work over the summer? Will you work over breaks? Or are you focusing more on those clients that maybe have a 10-hour job? You know, they just need some help launching some paid social campaigns and maybe, 10, 15 hours and it's done. I'd like to take some advice from my buddy, Luke Cage here. And keep in mind, if you are the change agent on campus, start with you, okay? You really want to leverage that professional background. So when you're thinking about your service menu, what have you done? If you're a PPC specialist who teaches on the side, or that was your career prior to academia, offer a PPC service. If you're a tech SEO, offer a tech SEO service. I've been pretty blessed to have fortunate to have a career where I've worked in multiple areas. So I'm comfortable offering these services because it's up to me to back up the students. A client could call with a need while a student's in class, so I need to be responsive. Now, this program exists to create opportunities for students, but I have the responsibility to help get that client base. I love working with students on biz dev, but we do need somebody who's not a student looking at long-term partnerships, writing grants, working with donors. So your role includes that biz dev piece as much as quality control, training, and beyond. So I would say start with what you know. Researchers, publishers, they start with their areas of interest, right? So you can begin this professional practice organization with your professional interests as well. Our very first offering, again, was that agency team. I wanted to go to market with some sort of service that would create opportunities for multiple students. So this is what I developed. For a client who needs strategy, content, development, a launch or a relaunch, do a needs assessment, scope out the project, and they'll get a team of 3 to 5 students. One student on the team serves as account executive, and this is generally a senior or somebody who has had multiple internships already. All of the students who are paid in our program have to have prior professional experience, but the account exec is selected, here the student on screen, Tessa, she'd worked with 2 different digital marketing agencies, a more regional one and a national one, that had worked full-time over the summer for a multinational corporation. So for the account exec, this is an opportunity for that student to focus less on developing digital marketing skills and learn more about people management, project management. That's important, managing the relationship and assisting me with business development initiatives. Every other student on the team has the title of account specialist. So each student will lead an area. This will vary. Nothing we do is cookie cutter. We're a true consultancy where we're customizing everything to what the client needs. Sometimes the account specialists are split up by a functional area. So it could be we have an editorial lead, we have a design lead, maybe we have a paid media lead. Could also be broken up by platform, a web lead, an email lead, a social lead. Really depends on the project. But each student leads an area with which they have prior experience, but they learn because they'll support another account specialist in an area they want to learn more about. So there's a lot of peer education. Again, this is not a curricular program, but it is certainly one that provides a lot of educational opportunities for our students. Okay, so it wouldn't be a digital marketing conference, right, if we didn't have women yelling at cats. So pardon the meme. But a decision that you'll also want to think about over the course of launching your program is, do you use preferred platforms or are you platform agnostic? So one example might be if you're an e-commerce consultancy, if you want to focus in that particular realm, preferred platforms means that you're only going to work with Shopify. You'll only build an online store in Shopify, and you'll only take on clients who also use Shopify. Very valid. Very, very valid way to go. I do the platform agnostic approach because I want students over the course of 2, 3, 4 semesters in our program to have experience using multiple platforms. So one of my recent grads interested in a career in e-commerce has used all 3 that you see on screen. At a cursory level, can describe the pros and cons of each. I think it makes the student more marketable. Does have a little bit more onboarding. So that preferred platform approach, it's a very efficient. This is what we do, this is what we don't do. But I do think being platform agnostic leads to better outcomes. So this also can tie into social media. Do you use Hootsuite, CoSchedule, or using Later? Do you want to work with clients who are using one platform over another? I think it opens you up to more clients and more diverse learning outcomes by opening yourself up to working with multiple platforms. But start with where you're comfortable. Just going to check the chat really quick. Juan asked a really great question about managing expectations of students that don't make the cut, that aren't hired into the program. Now, again, I mentioned that this is used in admissions to attract students to our program. So what I've done, often if a student isn't the right fit for our program, they just haven't had enough prior experience or the experience that the slate of clients needs. So I've developed something called the Digital Marketing Career Lab, which is a career exploration program to give that student more experience and to identify early talent to get them ready for opportunities their junior or senior year. That career lab works with an external client, but it is a pro bono client. And I developed a 5-week curriculum that walks the student through web, email, and social and different aspects of that. So if a student isn't the right fit for a paid gig this semester, I created programs to help them get there in the future semester. And also because we serve as career mentors and advisors on our campus, I can help identify opportunities for that student to build up their base of experience. So awesome question, Juan. Thank you for asking. All right, so let's think about our ideal clients. And I think that when we develop this type of program, we want to look for the right fit. And that means several things. Who's the right fit for you? Who's the right fit for your students? And are you the right fit? Are you the right solution to a business you might be pitching? A lot of programs like ours focus on mom and pops. These are very important businesses to the economy, so we like working with them for sure. What's great about a mom and pop business, particularly if you're in a college town, tell admissions who your clients are. We worked with a couple of businesses in the downtown corridor, and I let admissions know that. So as students walk past those businesses, as the admission tour kind of pokes in and out of that corridor, they can reference the connection that the university has. One challenge with mom and pops is that the work's pretty personal, and the owners of these businesses direct and do. So it can be challenging time-wise to work with these businesses, but highly encourage reaching out to local businesses, particularly those that are near your campus. Working with startups can be pretty exciting, especially when the startup is launched a product that is really innovative, that offers a lot of value. But startups can be challenging too, depending on the level of maturity. Are they new? Are they completely new? Or do they still use the term startup, but they're making money? They've had a couple rounds of funding and they have a staff. So startup can mean many things to many different people. You could productize an offering. So you have a startup package, a launch landing page, one-page website, maybe securing social handles, getting them set up for when they scale up. A lot of times in startup phase early on, the offerings need to be clarified. The product or service offering can evolve as there's funding from an angel investor. So that can be a challenge early on. We have a great relationship with some startups though that have made money. They're a little bit more evolved. They know what their offerings are. They just needed our help to better go to market. So again, you could focus on one type of client, or you could focus on clients in a category at a specific point in their growth. Larger enterprises are great to work with. It's exciting to be attached to those known entities, those top employers in your community, but it can be a challenge because these larger enterprises typically have that digital marketing staff already, or maybe they're engaged with agencies and outside consultants and have their own staff. So it can sometimes be a challenge to find the right fit. The organization might want to work with you. There could be a VIP at that large employer who is an alum of your institution. Sometimes you have to get creative, and that's where I got the idea to launch that Brandscape service that has been leveraged primarily by those larger organizations, just outsourcing tasks that the marketing team just doesn't have time to perform on their own. Nonprofits, great base of client projects, and most nonprofits that are exist to affect change in the community really care about their digital presence and social media, so they will invest. Great opportunities, some things to know about working with nonprofits. Your client fees might be paid from a grant. So the nonprofit might reach out to you to help craft the grant application, but the client project would only be guaranteed if the grant were to be funded. And then also nonprofits, it depends on who your initial contact is at the organization. You may have to sell that, your program on that person and then that person's boss, and potentially also the board of trustees. So business development is rarely done in one. I've rarely had a meeting and then it's over. Generally, there's a process involved. And with nonprofits, just given that structure where there are multiple layers of consideration, you just want to factor that into your time. But I love when we have a nonprofit client and the students are putting social media or content marketing skills to use to improve the community. Local governments, especially if you're in a college town, build those relationships with your local government. City Hall in Berea is a 5 to 10 minute walk from the School of Business on our campus. So look for opportunities to align with local governments, let them know about your program, particularly if there's a special improvement district in your area. You might be able to tap into the businesses that are part of that corridor as your client base. It's also important for the town and gown relationship between your university and local government, for City Hall to know that you have a resource that could help spur on economic development. Now, some consultancies will focus on just one type of industry, and that's okay too. We had a semester where randomly 5 out of 6 of our consulting projects were all local healthcare practices. So I had thought about creating a specific offering just for local healthcare. But what we learned in that semester, there are just so many variables between each of the practices that we worked with. One was an eye clinic, one was a dental clinic, but the level of resources they had and their digital marketing infrastructure, if you will, varied so much. Because we customize everything to client needs, we didn't have to develop a specific line just for that type of business, but we could have. And if there's an important market in your community, it's not a bad way to start a client base by focusing on businesses that are in a specific space. So in terms of identifying your ideal client, the next step is to look for leads. And if that process is new to you, start with where there can be alignments. I would say that most of my leads come to me from businesses that go on the Baldwin-Wallace website because they want a marketing intern, or they want a student to do some digital marketing tasks. They learn about our program, we set up an initial pitch call, and the mindset shifts from having an intern to working with our agency in some capacity. Talk to the folks in alumni and philanthropy on your campus. There are communications channels that you might not see as a faculty member that go to alumni regularly. And I love when we are able to connect current students to that alumni business owner. You want to leverage community relationships and partnerships too. There is a startup academy that's through a state-funded business, small business development center in town. I do digital marketing trainings and speaking gigs for that organization. In fact, that's primarily how I go into the community and create a presence for our program through the use of speaking gigs. But what I'll do is offer incentives for referral partners. So for individuals that go through that startup academy, I'll even add a special rate to my fee schedule for them to keep that pipeline going. And I send my businesses to that startup academy, right? If somebody needs marketing help, they might need accounting help or legal assistance, and that entity provides it. So looking for those mutually beneficial relationships will help bring in those leads. Okay, pricing. I'd mentioned before that we hire students that have prior professional experience. That's part of our value prop. Clients are paying for this, so they want students with experience, and that's part of our message, backed up by a professional digital marketing consultant. That's me. So I need to set my prices, my client fees, so that I cover my main cost consideration, which is student talent. ZipRecruiter and ADP just released a study. National average hourly pay for students at internships is $15.03. In Cleveland, where we're based, is $14 per hour. So I need to keep my pricing in mind. Most of our projects pay in that range. We also always want to pay more than a student could make at checking IDs at the rec center or through any other kind of campus job. So this is where I start. I'm going to spec out the project. How many hours will it take? And then based on these numbers, what will the charge be? So an example pricing formula would be the student wages for the number of hours, depending on the project, the share of any fees, so subscriptions, licensing to, any enterprise accounts, social media management platforms, if that client could benefit from that tool. Maybe we need to upgrade to a premium tier, or upgrade our technology also in order to accommodate that client. An administrative markup to create more resources and opportunities for students. In some consultancies, the faculty lead might not work with the students directly, so they do bring in outside alumni to handle some of the administration of the consultancy as well. So I have a question from Paul. How do you estimate the amount of hours for a prospective project? It's just generally based on what the client needs and my experience working with all sorts of businesses. I don't have a magical formula to give you. I will share with you though, as you begin to launch a consultancy, you could look at a flat fee for pricing projects. And then once you've developed a rhythm based on what your offering is, tracking those hours, do a time study, then you can evolve more into an hourly rate situation. So that might be a helpful way to go. All right, so we're coming up on our time here. I'm just going to cover a couple more things. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We do have some time before the next session. Something to think about as you price is to, price aggressively for growth to bring in those clients. So some potential discounts or opportunities you could create. You might want a special alumni rate. Always nice to give back to alumni who want to create opportunities for students. A nonprofit rate as well. You may even find that there are colleagues on campus that have a side hustle and they need your help. There's a professor in our School of Education who's a children's book author. So we worked with her in that separate side business. I'd mentioned a separate rate for referral partners, and that is definitely useful. But I will also say you may develop a portfolio rate. This is when you want to grow and you're new and you're launching, you want to build up that portfolio. So your initial pricing might be lower. We've been around for 5 years. Our prices reflect that, but the prices will be lower when you start out to bring in that initial business. Okay, so just looking at a question in the chat. From a legal perspective of setting up business on campus, where do you get started? It is different for each university. I think the first, what I mentioned early on at the start of the session was to look for structures that you could tap into and start there. So did the board release a new strategic plan? Is there a faculty or staff initiative? Is there something that student government has launched? So I would start with whatever structure exists. You are an employer, so you do need to have a conversation with whoever manages accounts on your campus, so your finance office, someone in operations, because you will need a set of accounts to take payment. They're also going to help you figure out how you take payment. Can you charge credit cards? Can you take a check? What is the best way? So you want to have that conversation with finance. Because you are working with student employees, you also need a pipeline to human resources. You want to make sure that you have an understanding from management within the student employment center. What is the appropriate paperwork? How do students, even apply? Is there a preferred system? Are there certain documents that have to be started? So start with that structure, tap into that trend, Deborah, and then work with finance so that they could set up the accounting back end, work with student employment so that you can make sure that you're doing everything right. I will say that students might use faculty as professional references in their job search, but if they use you as an employment reference, you do need to make sure you're keeping good records in accordance with HR and counsel. And you'll find that an employment reference is a little bit different than that character reference that you might provide as a professor. Good question, Deborah. Thanks. Let's see, Abigail, we have about 10 minutes to the next session. We open up any more questions that folks might have?
Yeah, definitely. We got like maybe like 5 more minutes of questions if anybody has something they'd like to ask. I know everybody's been pretty in tune to your presentation the whole time, so they're just
Oh.
soaking it all in.
Abigail, you say that to all the presenters.
No, I don't. Betsy has one. How much time per week do you personally devote to this?
Betsy, I drink a lot of coffee. So I'm given release time. Instead of a 5-5 load, I have a 3-4 load. And I, so I probably takes the place of maybe 2 3-credit hour courses each semester, but also over breaks into the summer. So it really varies. I will say that I've tried to create situations where in the past where I have my class day, I'm teaching Tim today, and then maybe I'm program Tim another day, and that doesn't work. I have to be ready to receive each of those conflicting, parts, each of those hats on a regular basis. So I would say that I have mainly consistent preps each semester, so that helps too.
Awesome, thank you. We have one more question come in. If you want to be the last one, I'm going to repost the link that Tim shared earlier if you want to connect with him.
Thank you for doing that. And I think one takeaway just to end on, think outside your department. You are going to have allies in other academic programs on campus. Digital marketing is pretty transdisciplinary. So there could be a student in the creative writing program who with a little training could be an awesome SEO content creator. There could be a fine arts photography student who is perfect to work in our e-commerce studio. And there may even be efforts underway in a different part of campus. If you're in the School of Business, in the PR program in the School of Communication Studies, there could be a faculty member there that's interested in launching this consultancy too, and you can team up. So again, what works on your campus will work on your campus.
Awesome. I love the messages and tips you gave for cross collaboration on your campus. So that was really great. Virgil just posted in the chat, our last keynote for the day is with Scott Wilder of HubSpot. So don't miss out on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. See you there. Bye, guys.
Thanks everybody for attending. Have
Thanks,
a great day.
Tim.